Hi folks, the Friendly Knitter here. Today was a sock kind of day, so I wanted to show you my favorite kind of toe and heel construction. This is what the general shape looks like. And it starts from right around the bottom of the toe and gives you a lot of closure. So a lot of times the constructions that I've tried before leave you with a lot of holes, which I don't like. Trying to give you a closer look at the construction so you can see how tight the toe ends up once you've done all of your short rows. Part of what makes this my favorite construction is you don't have to do heel gussets or pick up stitches, which for some reason always ends up with me having a lot of gaps, no matter how tight I try to do it. For this set of socks, I'm using a set of small circular needles. I like this Felici yarn from Knit Picks because it gives me the striping effect without having to pick a particularly difficult pattern to get something interesting on the sock. At this point in the sock, I have done all of my short rows and I'm going back and increasing as I continue to pick up those short rows and actually create additional yarn overs. So when you start a new row, a yarn over and then knit as normal. And the yarn over creates these little pairs at the end, just like you would normally expect with short rows. The difference being that as I get to the end of this knit row, I'm going to knit 3 different stitches together. So instead of having to pick up stitches on a gusset, I'm really picking up those additional stitches that would have been part of the gusset and just incorporating them into the heel. Hopefully you can see what I mean as I reach the edge here. When I initially did the short rows, I did it until there were 9 stitches left between yarn over pairs, and then you start flaring back out again once you've reached the narrowest point of the heel, and are increasing the number of stitches that you're working with actively by going back and picking up those yarn over pairs, and by either knitting all 3 stitches together or purling all 3 stitches together, depending on which side of the fabric you're on. It creates a much tighter stitch, whereas sometimes when I'm doing a regular heel flap and gusset, it feels like even if I do a knit 2 together through the back loop, or if I try to do a slip knit, there seems to be a gap or like a hole where I'm just not achieving the tightness of fabric that I want, which is why I like this particular pattern. I discovered it in the sock pattern that I've linked here, where I did that entire sock pattern. It was a little more challenging than I was expecting, but I really liked the heel and toe construction. So now, for this pattern, I'm just using that heel and toe construction, and I'm kind of winging my way through the rest of the sock, just knitting until it reaches 2 inches before the back of my heel, and then starting the heel construction, and then knitting until I get to where I'd like to do the ribbing for the leg. So here we are again next to the last yarn over pair of the row. And I'm trying to purl all 3 of these stitches at the end, but I tend to be a really tight knitter, so sometimes it's hard for me to get my needle in some of these tinier stitches. And make sure it doesn't fall off the end when I'm trying to bring it through. You can see under my left thumb there that there's a little pocket forming where the heel goes. It's a very trust the process moment, where you follow the instructions, and if you're like me and can't quite picture how it's going to end up, you just have to keep going, and suddenly, look, a heel. So now you can see we've started to turn that corner, and pretty soon I'll be able to just knit in the round straight up the leg and to the cuff. This is also a big step for me because normally I can't do anything without a pattern. I'm rather terrified of just winging things most of the time, which is why knitting appeals to me in the first place. There's a set of specific instructions to deal with. So this is an experiment for me. Hopefully the socks go as well as can be expected. The socks are not for me, so hopefully the recipient will enjoy these socks as much as I've made making them. Shortly after filming this, I discovered that the one thing that I love most about this construction, the lack of holes in the heel area, was entirely defeated because I had skipped a stitch by accident and there were holes all over the place, so I had to undo it and start over. And after I started over and finished the heel, the recipient of the socks tried them on, and the sock was too big, so I had to rip the whole thing back and start over. So I've definitely done this heel at least 3 times now. Hopefully we won't have to do it a 4th time. But that's the reality of knitting. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week.